Earlier this week, we were talking about Justin Bieber selling his music catalog, which led us to ask why. Who better to ask than our music expert, Eric Alper. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning. How are you? How about 200 million reasons why?
Okay, well, I mean, money is the obvious thing, but why wouldn't you just keep your music and then in perpetuity get the royalties off that music?
For sure. And here's the thing specifically about Justin Bieber. Not only was he selling tens of millions of copies of his physical CDs and cassettes around the world and vinyl record, but he also was one of the biggest artists to go into the streaming era. So he did really, really well there too. In fact, he's got about 60 billion streams on Spotify alone. But what this does is not only give a one-time payment for him to do whatever he wants to do with, it gives him a whole team. And that team is now Hypnosis, the company that he sold the rights to actively work and exploit the catalog as much as they possibly can. Because those investors who spent the $200 million are going to want that money back right away. So now that team is going to be putting Justin Bieber songs in television shows, in commercials, in movies, maybe even on Broadway. But what it does is it solidifies Justin Bieber's future for not only financial wherewithal, but who knows who's going to be listened to in 2031 or 41. But this deal is almost guaranteed that we're going to be hearing Justin Bieber's music for the next 50 or 60 years, because that company is going to want to start getting that music out there as much as possible.
Okay, now does this mean, so he gets all that money up front. Does this mean, though, that if the investing does well, that he still gets all the royalties, it's just who owns the rights? Is that correct?
He owns none of it anymore. He basically, yeah, so they bought the master recordings, which are the original recordings, and all the future publishers' information as well. So he's essentially just said, all of those years that I wrote those songs and recorded those songs, I don't get any money for that anymore. So now the next batch of records that I release, I'm going to get personally on that.
Okay, so you're getting the money up front that you want then to do other things. And he's by no means the only artist to have done this. I did kind of a deep dive into how many artists have sold their works. Of course, we've heard recently about Bob Dylan, about Bruce Springsteen doing theirs, but there's all kinds of, I was surprised Culture Club was on the list. They've sold their rights.
Yeah, it's interesting because, we've always talked about these older veteran artists who might not be selling as much copies of albums anymore, but certainly out there touring. But Justin Bieber is different. He's one of the first artists from his generation of musicians to sell their catalog. And it's interesting because what this does is it puts it into the mindset of people like Drake and The Weeknd and Ariana Grande and Dua Lipa and Lady Gaga. All of those kind of brand new artists now have to compete with Justin Bieber if they're thinking about selling the catalog. You can better believe that these newer artists that have been around for maybe 5 or 10 or 15 years as well are thinking, if I'm going to sell my catalog, do I have as many hits as Justin Bieber? Do I have as many fans as Justin Bieber? And so now Justin Bieber, what he's done is he's set the mark for everybody else to follow. And maybe that's a good place to be, leading the pack rather than falling behind and trying to compete with everybody else for the dollar.
Now, is this just his back catalog, or does this include anything further that he writes?
It's only for his back catalog, which is why it makes really good sense for Justin Bieber to do it as opposed to, say, a Bruce Springsteen, at least on the financial side. Nobody's going to ever tell Bruce Springsteen, hey, you made a bad deal for $400 million. But for Justin Bieber specifically, he's under the age of 30, so he could have still another 50 more years worth of hits. And I know people are going to scoff and say, but it's Justin Bieber. It's like nobody thought the Beatles were going to be around 2 years after their first release anyway. So you never know. But when artists sell their catalog to companies like this and they keep doing things with it and keep moving it and exploiting it and doing all the things that they have the power and the right to do, who's not to say that the pop stars of like the Drake and the Weeknd and Bieber aren't going to be heard 40 or 50 years from now? That generation kind of made these artists. They're going to be listening to them at their weddings, at their bar mitzvahs, at their bat mitzvahs, that's the music of their lives. Okay.
Always great chatting with you, Eric, and we look forward to any excuse that we get to do that. So this was a great story to hang that on. Thanks so much, and we'll get your links up to your socials because you've got so much information. CHCH.com.